Many people like to think that a person's success in life is a measure of their ability and their effort. If a person is rich, famous, doing well in life, it's because they're being adequately rewarded for their effort and their skills. And conversely, if a person is not doing so well in life, perhaps they're poor, struggling, or just unsatisfied, it's because of their own shortcomings. It's basically a belief in karma, that people are generally rewarded proportionately to their abilities and the effort they put into what they do. This is known as a meritocracy, and it's commonly thought to be the epitome of fairness. While many people believe that we currently live in a meritocracy, or at least a society that's mostly meritocratic, many more people believe that at the very least we should live in a meritocracy. They believe that while our society isn't perfectly meritocratic, it could be, and it ought to be. Meritocracy is a comforting idea to believe. It suggests that as long as you try really hard, you'll be successful. It also suggests that the people at the top truly deserve to be there and are best suited for the task. In this video, I aim to contest this idea. I'll explain that we do not live in a meritocracy, that the idea of a meritocracy doesn't even make any sense and therefore cannot exist, and that the idea of a meritocracy isn't the height of fairness that it's made out to be. If an advocate of meritocracy explained their position to you, it might go something like this. Imagine two bakers. Both of them are just starting up their business. Neither has a monetary advantage over the other. Both bakers make the same types of products for similar prices. One baker proceeds to bring in double the profit that the other baker does. People just like his baked goods better. He's a better baker, so he has more success. This sounds like a reasonable explanation of reality. It's the type of logic we like to use when watching competition shows like the Great British Bake Off. The best baker wins, right? Well, it turns out that there are already some problems with the premise, which I'll get to. But first, what happens next? This example of competing bakers is only a one-off competition, which is probably as fair as things can get, but doesn't actually exist in reality. In reality, things are iterative. The competition repeats over and over. The competition is always happening. If we say that the bakers start off on equal footing, once one baker manages to be more successful than the other, however that happened, even if it really was meritocratic somehow, they are no longer on equal footing from now on. This is the snowball effect of success, and it's a large part of why meritocracies can't exist. At best, a meritocracy can exist for one iteration, and with each iteration it gets further and further from fairness. The first baker's success allows him to continue to have an advantage over the other baker. Perhaps he uses his money to open up a new location, pay for advertisements, or pay somebody to run the shop for him while he develops new recipes. He attracts more business and becomes even more successful. Furthermore, if he becomes really successful, it allows him to block other would-be bakers from starting their own businesses, perhaps by buying them out or by operating at a loss to offer customers extremely low prices until the competition can no longer keep up and they go out of business. But let's take education as a different example. You and a friend go to the same school, and let's say that you earn better grades based solely off your superior intelligence. Your better grades allow you to get into a better college, which gets you a better job. Even if it sounds fair so far, which it turns out it's not, all pretense of fairness falls apart as soon as you have children. Your child gets born into a much more well-off household than your friend's child, affording you the ability to put your child into an expensive private school that your friend can't afford. Your child not only gets better grades due to receiving more individualized attention, but the prestigious school grants a wider array of opportunities for higher education and connections with other successful people. Even if your friend's child gets the same grades as your child, colleges aren't as impressed by public schools. Even if both children get accepted into the same college, you can afford to pay for your child's education, where your friend's child has to go into debt, which, needless to say, is a large disadvantage. As you hopefully can see from these examples, the concept of meritocracy doesn't itself create fairness, but is predicated on fairness. A meritocratic system will exacerbate any existing unfairness. But the problem is, perfect fairness doesn't really exist. For a meritocracy to exist, all factors aside from effort and determination would have to be equal, but all factors are never equal. This brings me to the role of luck in success, and to some of the problems in that initial example of the two bakers. Firstly, it must be acknowledged that success isn't always a measure of ability, but is often a measure of luck. For instance, two bakers of equal skill are not guaranteed to find equal success, in which case any disparity in success is due to luck. One baker got lucky in finding a better venue for their bakery, or one bakery just so happened to be visited by a celebrity or social media influencer or whatever who boosted the popularity of the bakery. If they would have visited the other bakery, they would have done the same thing there, but they didn't visit that bakery through mere chance. And luck can go the other way too. One baker might be unlucky and a shipment gets delayed, reducing the amount of baked goods they can sell, falling behind their competition. Or one baker develops a repetitive strain injury, making it much harder to get the same amount of baking done as the other baker. There's an endless supply of this sort of circumstantial luck that can make even the hardest working person fail to become successful. But there's another sort of luck that's potentially more important. Let's say two people are not of equal skill. Why is one better than another? Was it entirely through inborn talent and/or hard work? That's unlikely, don't you think? Is it fair for one person to be better because they had more free time to practice, where the other person had to fill their time working? Perhaps one person had a mentor that took an interest in them at an early age, while the other didn't. Sticking with the baker example, maybe one baker had a grandmother who was really into baking and she passed down her well-honed recipes, while the other baker had no such advantage. Is that fair or earned? Perhaps one person had the right birthday. No, seriously, that can matter. In Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, he showed that there's a very strong propensity for professional hockey players to have January birthdays. And it's not that professional hockey players just happen to have January birthdays, it's that people with January birthdays have a much better chance of becoming professional hockey players. This is entirely due to the cutoff for age groups in youth hockey. If a bunch of kids born in 2014 want to play hockey, they'll all get lumped into the same age group, even if one kid has a birthday of December 31st, 2014, while another kid was born on January 1st, 2014. This is the largest age gap possible, so it's a bit of an extreme example, but the point remains that children born in January will have, on average, a multiple-month developmental advantage over the other kids, at an age where 6 months can make a large difference in height and body mass. So these January kids have an advantage over kids born later in the year when it comes to hockey playing. This advantage will quickly compound over time. When you notice that you're good at something, even if just because you're taller, you feel a natural incentive to keep doing that thing, motivating you to spend more of your time playing hockey than the other kids are. Plus, when your coach notices that you're the best on the team, simply because of your size, they'll naturally spend more time on you and keep you on the ice more often. Your parents will likely reward your prowess more than the other kids' parents will reward them. And perhaps most importantly, hockey talent scouts will pay more attention to you. All these advantages snowball, making the kids with January birthdays the ones that are most likely to continue with hockey into their adulthood, becoming pro players. No one could possibly suggest that you did anything to earn your January birthday, and therefore your hockey advantage. It was just pure luck. But what if we rearrange society to get rid of all these circumstantial factors? No inheritance, no arbitrary hockey age groups that give some kids an advantage because of their birthdays, no grandmothers passing down baking knowledge. Couldn't we have a meritocracy then? To that I say, no. Imagine that all children were raised by the government, in the same environment so that factors like family wealth and passed down knowledge would no longer apply. We could even say that all children are raised by neutral robots so that favoritism isn't possible. The only differences between people would be genetic ones. This, finally, gets at why meritocracies can't exist. Forget about just for one iteration, but at all. Because if a meritocracy is about success being earned, then I ask you, did you earn your natural talents? Did you earn your genetics? Is it fair that you were born short, or asthmatic, or stupid?
Easy. Now you try. First get a jar. Patrick, that's a pickle.
Are any of those things your doing? Of course not. You cannot claim responsibility for your genetics. The fact that you're tall has basically nothing to do with hard work. It's luck, pure and simple. But people are rewarded greatly for this kind of luck. For instance, if you're at least 7 feet tall, there's a 17% chance that you're a pro basketball player. And that's definitely not the only advantage of being tall. A much more consistent advantage is found in the dating world, because, as we all know, the women of Tinder only seem to swipe right on guys that are at least 6 feet tall. If you're unlucky enough to be shorter than that, you have to make up for it with an outstandingly above-average personality, a lucrative job, a penis the size of a small elephant, or all three. Some people just win the genetic lottery, and many people lose. But, of course, we must remember that we're trying to imagine a society that has reformatted itself to be as fair as possible. Perhaps in this society, basketball doesn't exist, and women have somehow been convinced not to value height. So the fact that you're born with the genetics to become tall won't matter. However, something will still matter to society, and there will be people who are born with just the right traits to be good at that something, and people who aren't. But let's imagine that we get around even this. There are 3 scenarios that I can see. Scenario 1. We somehow design society so that everything is valued exactly the same. If you happen to have an IQ of 60, you're guaranteed to be just as successful as a person with an IQ of 200. Or if you're the next Shakespeare, you're rewarded just the same as a person in a lifelong coma. Scenario 2. We take advantage of genetic editing to make everyone exactly as talented at every conceivable thing. It's a world of clones. Scenario 3. We develop free-to-use technology that can enhance any human attribute, so that the only thing holding you back from becoming a master pianist is your interest in it. All you have to do is get the master pianist injection and you're good to go. These scenarios might very well maximize fairness, and I think they're good examples of why we shouldn't only care about fairness, because I, for one, wouldn't want to live in those worlds. But whether you find any of those scenarios appealing is actually not relevant, because the thing is, they aren't meritocracies. In the first scenario, you are not rewarded according to your ability or your effort. The second scenario could actually be a meritocracy if every clone was rewarded exactly the same, but all people being exactly the same is not the ideal that advocates of meritocracies have in mind. And the third scenario only rewards interest, not effort or ability, because no effort or ability is required. Every skill takes no effort whatsoever to master. So I think it's fair to say that as long as society values some things more than others, and not everyone is equally capable of doing all things, that a meritocracy is not possible. Unless your definition of a meritocracy is simply that the most successful people are the most skilled, regardless of the massive amounts of luck involved in making them skilled in the first place. In that case, it is possible, at least in theory, though it's certainly not what we have right now. In many cases, it's true that the most successful people are the best at what they do, either because that's how they got the job in the first place, or because they've had the job for so long that they've learned how best to do it from experience, or both. But think of all the cases where that's not true. Either the people who found success despite not being skilled, like a manager who's less competent than his underlings, or the people who are amazingly skilled but are completely unrecognized, like an incredible singer nobody's ever heard of. And, of course, there's nepotism to consider, the perfect example of a person not earning their position, either through skill or effort. All they did was be related to a successful person. But this kind of ability, no matter the luck involved meritocracy, isn't what we're talking about. Because in my experience, people talk about effort as well as ability when they talk about meritocracies, not just ability only. So whether you got your skills from your genetics or your environment, you can't truly claim ownership over them. Whatever side of the nature or nurture debate you land on, you must admit that you had no say over it. There is no such thing as a self-made man. But I know some of you will have a problem with my saying that, so let me explain further. Let's consider more deeply than before the nature side of things. You might still wish to say that the person who puts in more effort will be more successful, which, of course, as I just described, can be true, but isn't true as a rule. But more importantly, does it have anything to do with fairness? Can a person truly take credit for that effort? After all, why does one person put in effort and not another? At first, the answer can seem obvious, because they chose to. But why did they choose to? Well, that's just their personality. It's just who they are. It's just their nature. Some people are naturally ambitious, not through their own volitional construction, but through the happenstance of genetics, or perhaps their environment. So in the end, effort comes down to luck exactly as much as inborn talent does. If you wish to press on and say, what if someone did make the conscious decision to change their personality? Or maybe you want to say, but people make day-to-day decisions that shape who they are. It's not all about genetics. I would say, sure. But that still doesn't legitimize this idea of earning your success, or a person taking ultimate credit for who they are, because this reaches the concept of free will. And the illusion of free will is the final nail in the coffin for the concept of a meritocracy. If you're not already convinced that free will doesn't exist, consider it this way. Cause and effect. When something happens in the universe, it immediately causes something else to happen, like one domino knocking down another, and on it goes forever. Free will is the claim that your choices are completely free of outside influences. The assertion that we have free will is essentially saying that we can somehow interrupt this process of cause and effect and alter it from the outside. Claiming that you don't have free will is not to say that you don't make choices. You do make choices. But those choices are themselves the effect of prior causes. Your decision to eat bacon instead of yogurt for breakfast today didn't magically materialize from nothing, not caused by anything. It was caused by the firing of neurons in your brain, which is beyond your conscious control. The firing of those neurons in that particular way was caused by the particular chemicals in your body every moment and every previous moment. The outside influences of sights, smells, what other people tell you, and so on, and the mental habits and channels of thought that you've been forming for your entire lifetime, like a stream of water eroding the ground to slowly form a river. You've been building yourself your whole life, yes, but you couldn't have built yourself any other way. The fact that you spent 10 years of your life on an unsuccessful dog walking business was beyond your control, because in the truest sense, you are not in control. The same goes if you find yourself in the position of massive fame and fortune. Life is simply a movie. You may be the main character of your life, but the main character of a movie doesn't get to write the script. They just say the lines. Now, I know many people initially take it this way, but the determinism of the universe doesn't have to be a bad thing, because we are truly the main character of the movie, not the actor. The difference is the actor can read the whole script and knows what happens next. The character doesn't. You may be miserable right now, but there's no telling how your life will be in 10 years. Just because you're in a downward spiral doesn't mean you'll stay in it. The person you are in the future could be entirely different from the person you are today. And even if the universe isn't entirely deterministic, even if there is such a thing as genuine randomness, that randomness is not within your control. There is no room in this equation for free will. So now that I think I've sufficiently explained the lack of free will in the universe, at least for the purposes of this video, hopefully you can see that truly everything in life comes down to luck. Luck in what happens to you, luck in who you were born as, and luck in where the universe pushes you next. So there is no real way to say that you earned the success you were given. Of course, it was you that did the actions to get there, but you can't claim credit for those actions any more than you can claim credit for your mother's existence. You were simply lucky to be born into a role of skill. All this is not to say that we should let just anyone be in positions of power or importance or success. You can defend the existence of experts without defending the concept of meritocracy. Most jobs really do require that the person doing them be competent. Of course, I want a seasoned, expert pilot to be flying my plane, not just some random anybody. But the point being made is the fact that that person is a pilot is no indication of a superior character, or at least a superior character that they themselves can claim responsibility for. The point is also that someone being in a position of power or success does not automatically mean that they're worthy of it, or that they earned it or deserve it. We should constantly question whether a person is worthy of their position, even if the answer to that question is very frequently yes. The point is also that we can't allow ourselves to think society operates fairly. We may be unable to achieve a meritocracy because we can't put everyone on a blank slate, nor would doing that even be desirable, but we can try to reduce inequalities to a more bearable degree. Recognizing the luck that has put you into a better spot than someone else also has the benefit of decreasing your sense of entitlement, self-importance, and superiority, and increasing your gratitude, humility, and empathy. Believing that people generally get what they deserve is a great way to justify not caring about the less fortunate and over-admiring the successful. It's also a belief that doesn't reflect reality.